Okay, welcome to Real Amigos. I have an amazing guest today, Anthony Nguyen, who was on the board with TCAD. So we're going to chat with him real quick. I just wanted to say hello to everybody. Ian is not on here tonight. Unfortunately, he is gallivanting around the world with his beautiful bride, and they are all over the planet right now, like Europe or something fun like that. So you're just getting me tonight, which is not as much fun, but we got Anthony coming on. A lot of crazy things happening in the market over the last week. Hopefully we'll get to chatting a little bit about that. But what I really want to talk about, and I know what you really want to hear about, is property taxes, how to protest your valuations, all that fun stuff. I know my email has been full of people reaching out to me saying, I can't believe my valuations have gone up this much. I'm gonna have to pay this much more in taxes. Anthony was kind enough to reach out and say, hey, I'm willing to come on and clear up some misnomers, some things that maybe I even said wrong in my video. And then we're gonna go through and talk about what you can do as a homeowner, because I've had quite a few homeowners reach out to me saying, look, I don't know if I can afford my taxes for the year. It's getting tough. So welcome to the channel, Anthony Nguyen. Oh, wait, we got to do this. Sorry. There we go. Anthony Nguyen. Nice to have you, man. Thank you so much for the time.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me on your show. I've been following you for quite a while now, and great to be here.
Awesome. Well, I really do appreciate that, and I appreciate anybody that watches the channel or reaches out to us for help. Anthony, so walk us through. You were on the board. Tell us what your position was and what it was like to be on the board with, I think, TCAD, right?
That's right. Yeah. So I have I was on the TCAD Travis Central Appraisal District Board since 2018. I was just a regular citizen back then, but I kept getting my appraisal notices and noticing my taxes getting higher. And I spoke out at City Hall back then, got to know the mayor, the city council members. And when a board seat came up, they asked if I wanted to be on the appraisal district board. And I was like, well, what is that? I didn't know what that was. A lot of people didn't know what that was. I thought it was the ARB, which is when you protest the 3-tribunal panel that you go to. But no, it is a board that governs the appraisal district, which values our property. And they hire the chief appraiser, approves the budget. And I said, sure. I wasn't sure I could make an impact because I kind of knew how the system worked at the time. And I knew they were somewhat administrative. They just appraised property. But I applied that year. There were 4 other applicants, and I represented East Travis County. So we had to have an election amongst all of the East Travis County taxing district, Pflugerville, Round Rock, Elgin, Del Valley. All of those get to nominate somebody, and then amongst them, you have to get voted. So I went to a few, like 6 of them, and they all voted for me because the other guys didn't show up, and was appointed there and did 2 terms over there and learned a lot about the system.
Interesting. Okay. So I put out a video the other day talking about, people's taxes going up. And so you were saying that what I was saying was wrong, which was that's not when they're doing so let's take a step back. So when our appraisals come out every year, technically by the rule of the book, they're appraising your home valuation up to the first of that year. So as of January 1st. Now, my home valuations came out, and one of my properties, and we were talking about this off air, is 1.8 tax rate, went from $5,500 because I don't have a homestead on it, all the way up to like $9,300. And the valuation they gave me on my property went from like $300 all the way up to $536, and not one single home had sold during that time frame for that price point. So walk us through how this happens and how they come up with the taxes.
Yeah, so appraisals. So the statement that you got is the market value of your property. So the appraisal district is highly regulated by the state. The state tells pretty much everything that you have to do. And they say that the appraisal district has to appraise to market value. And market value is determined by comparable sales price for similar properties in that area. You're a realtor, so you do market analysis all the time. So you can pull those comps for people to determine the proper valuation. And that's what the appraisal district does. Just like a realtor could do when you want to go list a house, you'll figure out, well, what is it currently going for? And you pull comps. So the appraisal district does the same thing. They take sales data, and you can ask me about how we get the sales data, but they get sales data and then applies it to your house. And if your house is a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, they'll make those adjustments. And it's really a big computer system that does it for you. But the appraisal district has to do it based on the data that they have and based on last year's sales for last year only. Okay, so a lot of the times, yes, you'll see that your valuation seems like it's higher. I had the same thing with my house, right? I didn't get any special exemption because I was on the board, but they appraised it way high, and at the time, no house was ever sold. And I was like, well, you have a right when they do that to ask for comps, right? When you protest, you say, hey, give me all the comps that you use to appraise my house. And they will give it to you. I got 10 of them. And then you can look at them and see how they got those numbers. What happened in my case, and I think it happens in a lot of people's cases, is people that don't protest, those become part of the comps. And those are generally inflated. Well, they're not supposed to use that, but there's this fair and equity law that says every house has to be equitable to a similar house. So people that don't protest are actually inflating your house. And so if you ask for the comps for your home that they use, they will give it to you. And look at the last sold date. If it didn't sell in last year, you can throw that out. They should only use the sales data within that year, but they can use it in determining their appraisals. So when I looked at the comparable data, houses didn't sell in 7 years, but they didn't protest. So over the 7 years, it just incrementally got higher, and that became part of the comparable analysis that they did. And so that's why you should protest to get the market value, the fair market value of a house, if you think it is off. But generally, that is the reason why it is way higher. Other people in your neighborhood are not protesting, and their values are part of that comparable analysis. And if you ask them to remove it, they will remove it, and you'll probably get a lower value.
So I heard somewhere that only 20% of people actually protest their tax valuations. Does that sound right?
That's approximately right. 20 to 30%. It varies by year, but 20% of parcels, and it's almost like 50% by value, because commercial property owners all protest. They all use a taxing agent. So I want to say, and of course, I'm speaking for myself. I'm no longer on the board, so these numbers might not be correct from my memory, but almost half of the value is generally protested, because commercial value is always protested every year, because it doesn't hurt not to.
Right. So this becomes my question then. So I've got several questions. So number one, you asked where do they get the prices? So number one, where do they get their valuation? So only 20% of people. So if you're listening to this and you haven't protested your taxes, I find it very difficult to imagine that the tax district will go ahead and just appraise your property on whatever it is, kind of hoping you actually don't protest your taxes. And the onus is on you as a homeowner to protest your valuations. And so that's really ridiculous to me, because like both my properties way overvalued for what's actually sold comps. So, but it's up to me as a homeowner to protest those valuations. So my question is, where do they get that sold data from? I know Austin Board of Realtors had sued the CoreLogic in the past, because CoreLogic was giving y'all, sorry, not you, at the time free information, or not free, you paid for it, but CoreLogic was giving you the sold data. So where's the sold data come from now?
Yeah, so in 2018 and 19, we did purchase it from CoreLogic, which is your back-end software provider that Arbor used. And CoreLogic resells that data to the Zillows, Redfins, of the world. And during that time, yes, the CAD was using CoreLogic. The CAD didn't do anything wrong. State law allows them to use sales data. Now, Arbor, Austin Board of Realtors, has rules about their data. They feel like it's their proprietary data and it shouldn't be used by any government entity. So the CAD generally does not have direct access to MLS data. But when Arbor sent a cease and desist letter to TCAD, we stopped using that data. And if you remember in 2020, we did not increase residential property, but we did appraise residential property. But since we didn't have any data for 2019, all residential properties were essentially the same because we appraised it with the data that we have. Since we didn't have data for that 1 year, we had to use data from 2018. We did appraise commercial property.
So I guess the question then becomes, so you have a way of getting the data, but I guess the question,
yeah. So we didn't get the data, but they found a source, and all I can tell you is it's a proprietary data source. It's no longer CoreLogic. It's somebody else in a different part of the state. They say they can get it.
And they were just plugging into Redfin and pulling the data from Redfin, right?
Potentially. You know, I've tried to ask the question. I've asked the question, do we have MLS? They say no. So now all I'm getting is it's proprietary. So this is what the thing about sales data is, the biggest secret that everybody knows about except for the CAD. Because yeah, Arbor is not going to give it to us directly, but you know it. Every realtor in Travis County knows it. You can go to Redfin, Zillow, realestate.com, and you can get a pretty good idea of values. So it's out there, but it's one of those games that the CADs have to play and they struggle with, right? This is something, because by state law, they have to use sales data, but the local realtor associations don't give it to them. So they have to find another way because they have to appraise property. So it's their duty. Yeah.
Right. So it's their duty to appraise properties, but how, let me ask this question. So an appraisal district, I always love this. If you read the articles that come out, I forget who the chief officer is, but she always blames the city and the mayor for the taxes. And so the onus is never on the TCAD. Their job is to only take and get the taxes, right? Figure out how to collect the taxes.
Yes.
Let me ask this question then. So if the onus is not on TCAD, which I'm going to go ahead and say part of it is, but that's just me. I like to be controversial. So my question is this. So how do they come up with the taxes they need to collect? And then why do they go ahead and overtax the crap out of non-homestead owners?
Okay, so what you have to understand is Texas has a very decentralized system. Texas is a conservative state, it always has been. So when they set up the tax collection system, they broke it into 3 components. So the tax collector, Bruce Elfont, which we elect, he collects the taxes from the people and redistributes them to the cities, schools, counties, community colleges, all of the different districts. We have, I think, 300 different taxing districts in Travis County alone, right? But he doesn't decide what the tax is, and he doesn't decide what the appraisals are. He simply collects the taxes and gives them back to the municipalities. Taxes are basically a function of your property value times the tax rates for all the taxing districts on your property. So before 1980, we had the cities, the counties, and the school districts appraising property. And guess what? They never agreed, right? The school would say it's worth 100,000. The city would say it's worth 90,000. And you're like, what the heck? Why do you guys disagree? Well, after 1980, the state said, this is crazy. We're going to create a central appraisal district and break it up by counties. So there's 254 appraisal districts in Texas, and each of them centralize the appraisal process. And then all of the cities, schools, and municipal districts use that value to assess their taxes. And those taxing units set the tax rates based on those valuations. So the valuation is really determining the portion of the overall taxes that the cities, counties, and school districts want.
So,
Right?
but I guess the question then is how, so the tax district obviously is the centralized spot, right? So
For determining the share of the
determining the
taxes that you
value of
pay.
the home. Right.
Yeah,
So
right.
they figure out the value of the home, but then from there, what do all these taxes go to? Like prime example, one of my properties went up $4,000 in 1 year, and what I'm estimated to pay on it. Where does that extra $4,000 go? I know part of it goes to the school, and the way it works is that big areas like AISD only get half of that. So if the $6,000 of my $9,000 goes to the school district, only 3,000 really goes to AISD. The other 3,000 goes back to the state to be redistributed. So a lot of my taxes go back to the state anyway. But why the hell?
Okay,
Another
that's school finance, and
$4,000?
that gets a
Right.
little complicated. But in general, everybody depends on the school district. Most of it goes, half of it goes to the school district. 1.2 to 1.4 in Pflugerville, 1.2 in Austin will go to the school districts. About 40 to 50 cents will go to the cities. About 45 cents goes to the counties, 10 cents to an ESD. Austin Community Colleges gets a 10 cents, and it usually equates to about 2 to 3%. And so the tax collector, they distribute it to them, and they fund their city, they fund the county, they fund their school districts with it. You're right. Austin is a little bit different because Austin is considered a wealthy district. So they have to give a lot of their funds to the state to give to the rest of the state to help pay for education across the whole state. But that's a whole nother discussion. But the idea is the school funding across all of the state, we all pay about 1%. It used to be 1%. Now with compression, the state is lowering that tax to, now it's like 92 on average cents for every school district. But the idea is everywhere in Texas pays about 1% for M&O taxes, and each locality can impose a little bit higher or lower rate. And if you're too wealthy like Austin, then yes, they recapture some funds and puts it into the state for all of the other poor districts that can't accumulate the same amount, because they want equalized funding across all of Texas. And Texas is a big state. So yeah, Austin is rich, but East Texas isn't. West Texas isn't. So those school districts need help from the rich areas, which is generally the cities, right? Like Austin, Houston, Dallas.
Well, here's the irony that I find in this. You have so I still want to get back to where the extra $4,000, if $5,500 last year was good for my taxes, why they need an extra $4,000 this year? That's what I want to get to. So I think that's the question a lot of homeowners have. Where does my extra taxes go every year? I think people want to know. I'm one of those people. It's like, okay, if you're going to take the money from me, I want to see improvements. I want to see the road improvements. I want to see where the money's going. And I think a lot of homeowners are frustrated because now they have to pay more money. And when there's inflation, when everything is more expensive, travel costs are more expensive, everything's more expensive, and now my taxes are going up. I'm already pinched as a homeowner, and now I'm being pinched even more. And it's on me to pay $50 to a company and then 30% of what they save me to protest my valuations, when the CAD just goes, I'm going to appraise your home way higher than both of my properties in Travis County, way higher than what is actually sold. So I want to get to that. In fact, I already lost my question because I'm so frustrated with that. Oh, but the irony. I find the irony in the fact that AISD has shut down schools recently, and that people are leaving AISD to go to schools around AISD because they're not happy with the school, and they're having to actually lay off. They said they're not going to fill 250 vacant seats or positions, and they're still laying people off, but they're just reshuffling. So I find it funny that we're sending all this money back to the state when we probably could use it here in Austin.
Anyway. So just because appraisals rise doesn't necessarily mean you will pay higher taxes, okay? Because your appraisal does is it says if you have a 3,000 square foot house, another person that has a 3,000 square foot house in your neighborhood, you guys should pay approximately the same amount of money in taxes. It determines your percentage of the pie that you pay. Okay. So just because it goes up doesn't necessarily mean it will go down. So let me give you a dramatic thing. Let's say all of our houses doubled. Say the TCAD was mean and they doubled everybody's houses. Do you think your taxes, your net taxes will double?
Yes, on my property that doesn't have a homestead, it will.
Well, no. What
I'll
the
show you.
law says,
After this, I'll show you the appraisal I
okay,
got.
no, well, we'll get into that. But in general, if all of our properties double, then let's say your overall tax rate is 2%. If your tax rate goes down to 1%, you're paying the same amount.
Correct.
Okay. So you will see this year, all of the taxing districts will lower their tax rates. They have to, because SB2 or HB3 from a couple of years ago that was passed, it limits the amount of revenue the taxing units can increase. School districts can only increase by 2.5%. And if they go over 2.5%, they have to compress their M&O tax rate to compensate for increased appraisals. Cities and counties can only increase their M&O taxes by 3.5%. And if appraisals are going up 30, 40, 50%, then they have to compress their tax rates to compensate for that. So you will see that, your overall tax rate might actually be under 2% this year because of increased appraisals, because that's how the math works, right? Let me put it a different way if you don't understand that. Let's say Anthony was in charge of the appraisal district and I could wave my magic wand and I cut your valuations in half, right? So, and I cut it across the board of Travis County that everybody's valuation is 50%. Do you think the taxes that you pay at the end of the year will be cut to 50%? No, it won't, because the taxing units will see that valuations were cut 50% and they would just double the tax rate. If it was at 2%, they would double it to 4% and get the same revenue, because state law allows them to collect the same amount of taxes from the previous year plus a little bit for inflation, 2.5% for schools, 3.5% for cities and counties. So the appraisals, that's why I say the appraisals do not really matter, because the tax rate is really the important thing. The tax rates that the cities, counties, and school boards set really determines how much you're going to pay at the end of the day. It's a deflection, right? It's a very clever illusion that makes everybody think it's the appraisals, but the appraisal district has to, by law, appraise to market value. And the market values have gone up. I watched your podcast. They have substantially gone up over the last 2 years. So but the system was clever because if everybody goes protest their valuation thinking they're going to lower their taxes and they won't. What you can do is you go to the tax rate hearings that city councils, county commissioners, ESD boards, school boards have. And when they set their tax rate, that's where you protest to those board members that are elected and say, hey, I need you to cut spending and reduce the tax rate so that I pay less. And the state has been, before they could increase it by 8%. And they all did. And that's why our taxes were rising the last 10 years, because the inflation amount was set to 8% in the 80s and then never changed it. They finally changed it 2 years ago, and now it's at 3.5%. And so, they're going to probably demand, because inflation is at 6 or 7%, that the state should increase it. But I don't think they're going to do that. So they're severely limited in how much taxes they can increase now because of SB3 that was passed in the last legislative session. Does that make sense?
It does, but it still doesn't. So when homeowners hear me out. When homeowners get their valuations, right? So prime example, on one of my rental properties went from 300 to 536, not one single comp to support that valuation. In fact, in their press release or in the release, they said they need to be more aggressive. Is what what's the head person's name?
Mariah Krigler, yes. Mariah.
Yes, Krigler. She said they need to be more aggressive, and then she also said that West Austin was not paying enough. I know people in West Austin, they're paying $150,000 to $200,000 a year in property taxes. Is that not enough? I don't get that, but that's for something else. So my question though is that when homeowners get that valuation, like mine, they went from 300 to 583, 536, and it's saying that my last year's taxes I was paying was $5,500, but now it's $9,400. So almost a $4,000 increase. That's more than 2.5%. That's more than 10%. If I were to, so why are they able to almost double my taxes in 1 year?
Well, the rates will be lower, but so you have an
you're saying that number I got, 9,400, whatever, don't pay attention to that because that's not the real number.
Well, you won't know the real number until October and all of the taxing units set their tax rates. I'll guarantee you that most likely all the tax rates will go down significantly because values are up 50% across the board. And because it's your investment property, unfortunately, you don't get those 10% homestead caps. You have to pay that full rate. So yes, if you have the data and you're sure that there's no property that sold for that much, similar property in your area, then you have a case that you should file a protest and get it as low as you can.
So if I were to do nothing, but so you're saying that they can only go up, what was it, 3.5% or 2.5%?
2.5% for schools and pretty much 3.5% for everybody else. Junior colleges and some ESDs can go to 8% still, but yeah.
But that's still what I'm saying is that my taxes on that one property went up more than 40%. So you're saying that even if I did nothing, that would not stick. The challenge I have is that no, they probably would keep it there just because I didn't protest it. If I protest it, I'll probably win and get it to come down a little bit. But
you'll be able to get it down a little bit, but it's because everybody else's went up the same amount. In theory, they should lower the tax rates to compensate for the increase in appraisal values. And you'll see that, right? It'll, some places will be under 2%. Maybe where I live, I'm hoping I can get it under 2%, which is amazing. But yeah, the Westlake area, the Eanes IC area has been under 2% for years because their valuations were so high. That's why you see in the most expensive real estate market, their tax rates are lower because their valuations are higher.
The point I was making though is that Krigler is saying they're not paying enough. Yeah, I personally know people that purchased even in Central Austin that their first year were paying $23,000 a year for a property, and when they try to go up to $40,000 the next year. That's a lot of money to live in. I mean, obviously,
I completely. It's a lot of money, but she's not determining taxes.
Right.
She's determining the slice of the pie.
But this is where I'm saying, as a consumer, a homeowner, somebody living, to hear the fact that you are saying that people in West Austin are not paying enough taxes, when you're the one that's in charge of collecting the taxes, it's kind of a BS move. And I think a lot of people.
Well, she doesn't collect them either. Bruce Elfont, the tax collector, collects them.
Okay.
She just determines how much of the pie you pay. And yeah.
But do you think it's fair that she says people in West Austin don't pay enough when they already pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in property taxes?
I don't think she said that they don't pay enough. I think she said that the valuation is too low.
I'll pull up her quote. She did say that. In fact, she said that. I read it, and then I put it on my channel, and I even showed on my channel where she said that.
Okay.
She did.
Well, the other element of that is that every CAD gets audited every 2 years by the state comptroller. The comptroller comes in, picks a few properties, and he has his own data sources. And if we are too low, they will penalize the school districts for that. So we failed the audit in far west Travis County, right?
Okay.
Marble Falls, there's a few places over there, and we failed it. And so they had to pay us, we didn't have many properties out there, but we failed it. So if she doesn't appraise to market value, our district gets dinged for it. So
she should be a little more clear with what she says then, or the reporter that wrote what she said should probably be a little more clear then, because that's not the
She's
way
usually pretty careful from what I've seen,
okay.
but it's not taxes, but property values. And quite frankly, you should know that, when we didn't appraise residential property in 2020, they were off, right? They were too low. You weren't complaining because you're thinking, well, I'm going to pay less, but really you just delayed the inevitable, because we did fail a few school district audits because we didn't appraise property, and now we're catching up. And I think that's what she's meaning, is that since we skipped a year, we're playing catch up, and the market just took off in the preceding years, that it was too low to begin with, because the market has been rising. Last year it rose in the first 6 months extremely high, and it's continuing on. So
What's
for
pretty
multiple,
interesting about last year, and I can pull up a graph here once you start to talk. But what's really interesting about last year is that, yeah, prices did take off pretty quickly, and I have the tape to show it. But prices went up really quickly. The challenge is that once they hit their max in July, they dropped down about 25 to 30%, depending on the area, and then they came back. So we saw like a 50% increase, but then we saw about a 25% decrease. I'll pull the numbers. And so if you look at the full year, you can't go by just the middle of the year. You have to go by the entire year. And I just find interesting that both of my properties in Travis County, they overvalued. Now, one, they keep trying to pull comps from a neighborhood that it's not in. I've protested before and shown them why they're wrong. So I know for a fact this one will probably come down about $7,500 instead of $95. But I've protested. So what do you think, if somebody's going to protest their valuations, what are the direct steps that they can do to protest their valuation and hopefully bring down the amount? And then I know a lot of people are asking questions. I want to get to the questions in a second as well.
Yeah. So I protested a couple times, and you got to keep it simple, right? There is an ARB board, appraisal review board, that you submit your data to. These are just common people. They're usually retired people that, look at the data and make a judgment call. So don't go in there with a ton of information. I go in there with one spreadsheet. I go to a realtor, say, hey, here's my address. I want the last sales from last year, from January 1st to December 31st. And you take that data, plug it into a spreadsheet, and do your own analysis, or have your realtor do it. It's not that tough to do. And look at the homes that are similar. And if they're not similar, you can throw them out. But make that analysis and make an objective determination of what the value is. If by looking at the data, it is lower, then by all means file the protest. And I always advocate doing it yourself. I don't like, paying $50 and then 30% of the savings seem like a lot of money, when it's an easy process to do. Get the comps, look at the data, and do the analysis, and get the full year of data. Ask for the comps from the appraisal district. By law, they have to give it to you, and look at what they're giving to you. And when you go to the meeting, say, hey, all of these didn't sell last year. You can't use it. They'll throw them out, and you give them your data. They'll plug it in. And I have found that they have always given me a lower amount because I had the data. The data showed that my house was lower in value, and that's all there is to it. It's simply data dependent. You say that no house is sold as much. Well, I believe you. To show the data, ask for their comps, because you want to throw out all the ones that sold 5 years ago that never protested, because that goes into the calculation. And that's part of the flaw in the system, is that they are allowed to use people's property that never protest as comparable values. But technically, they should only be using sales data, and that's what you do.
Didn't last year, I don't know if it was because of the C word, but you couldn't actually do in-person, like you couldn't go in and do in-person informal hearing.
You could if you wanted to. If you demanded it by law, the Attorney General gave an opinion that you could do that.
Okay.
But had strongly encouraged everybody to do it remotely. But there were still a lot of people that wanted their day in front of the board, and you could definitely have requested it, got in line, and done in person if you wanted to.
In person. So there's two parts to that, though. There's the informal and the formal, and we need to talk about both of those because I've done both, and one of those is not even worth the time. So you were saying get comps from an agent. What if there are no comps that help support bringing the valuation down?
Then it's probably not worth protesting. At least not through an agent. Well, they're not going to get paid if they can't bring it down. But it's, if you look at the data and it looks like they're fairly valued, or your house is already lower than the comps, then there's really no point in protesting it. It really is. And if you have a homestead and you don't think you can get it below 10%, you're not going to change your taxes, right? Say they appraise it 50% higher and you can lower it to 40%. Well, you're still only paying 10%. So the market has risen more than 10% this year. So all those homesteads, you're just wasting your time because it's not going to change your taxes if you can't get it under a 10% increase.
Okay. So I prefer the other method, just hiring somebody, because I've done it both ways. And I've gone in and I feel like I got the runaround on both times I've done, even the in-person and the formal, just because I get a lot of mealy-mouthed like responses. So if I go in and say, okay, let's look at the assessed value, and I go by and I go, okay, here's where the assessed value, it should be showing lower. And they go, no, but we're going by market value. Okay, well, let's go by market value. If a home was to sell this with this, these are the reasons why this home would sell more than my home. So it shouldn't be valued the same. Because the thing that people don't understand is that your valuations, there could be a home that sold that has $100,000 in upgrades. Your house doesn't have one of those upgrades, and now you're assessed by that sale, even though you didn't do any of those upgrades. And I think that's really important for people to do as well.
Yeah, you can explain that. And, if you have a lot of sales data, you can take out the high, take out the low, and put the average in. That, it is an assessment, and things like that you can definitely explain away. But they should have that information in there that, oh, these guys have a pool, or these guys have an exterior building.
What if you don't want to let them know you have a pool? Asking for a friend.
Well, the appraisal district does have drones, and they can see you got a pool or not, and they will add it. Or you add a shed, they'll add that too. So
do they let you know when they fly those drones so I can cover it and just green fake grass?
No, you can't. Yeah, and whenever you do pull a permit for remodeling, the CAD picks up that data and they plug that in. So they have pretty good data systems to figure out what you're doing. Of course, they probably can't catch everything, and they're supposed to visit, but they try to use a lot of technology to try to assess the values as fairly as they can.
I've seen people, no joke, who said, "Oh, I'm going to go beat this thing. I'm going to win." They've gone in and they actually they've had the value go up even higher than what they were assessed because they went in with not very good info. And
okay, so there's anecdotal evidence that happens.
I'm not saying it's a lot, but I have seen people actually do that.
Well, they passed the state law in the last legislative session that eliminates that. So the CAD can never increase their appraised value from the initial value that they set forth. In theory, that was possible before, but the state made that crystal clear that if you protest, they can't increase it anymore. So don't worry about that happening anymore. It's against the law.
Okay, good. So if you're going to protest, so pretty much so there's two ways to protest your valuation and your taxes. Number one, when they're setting the taxes, go in and tell your councilman or woman that you don't want taxes going up, right? When does that usually happen?
So that is after you do your appraisals and do your protests, certified values goes to the city, counties, and school board. And during the summer, they'll put together their budget, and their staff will come with a tax rate that needs to be ratified by the school board, city councils, county commissioners court. And they'll have a public hearing for when they decide on approving those rates. So in the last round of legislative laws, they said that we need to post that in one place. So every appraisal district has a website. In Travis County is travistaxes.com. You can put your address in there, and it will list all of the taxing units and all of the meetings when they set the tax rates, so that you can go to those meetings and express your concerns about rising taxes. Because quite frankly, what has always happened is the appraisal district, like Travis County, would get hundreds of thousands. I think, 300,000 protests last year. People protest their valuations. But at those meetings, it'd be one or two people, sometimes none. I was one of those people 6 years ago at my city council. I was the only one that protested at city council, and I did get them to lower the rate, or they kept the rate the same. They wanted to increase the tax rate. I told them, hey, my house values went up 10%. If you do that, I'm going to pay 10% more. Inflation's at 2%. Why are you doing this? And they listened to me, and they actually lowered it, pissed off the city manager, and he ended up quitting and going to Galveston, and we got a new city manager. But that's how I got involved and how I got on the appraisal district, because they were all taught the same thing, that, oh, we don't control the valuation. It's TCAD. It's their fault. And then they're like, oh, well, Anthony knows something about taxes. Put him on there, and he's going to lower all of our values. And, the board members don't appraise property on TCAD. It's a computer system that does it. But under my direction, 1 year we did not raise appraisals, right? So, it was a minor miracle, but yes, you need to fight this at City Hall, county commissioners, and school boards. That's where the fight needs. And really, you shouldn't wait till the public hearing. You should go to all of the preliminary budget meetings while they're formulating their budget, because that's when they decide on the tax rates and everything. It's the spending. The public hearing for the tax rate is at the end of the cycle, and it's very difficult to change it. You can do it, but it causes a lot of consternation amongst the ranks. So if you can get in there early and say, hey, I don't want my taxes to go up more than 3%, they can do that, and they can put it in a budget, and then they will lower the tax rates to compensate for any increase in appraisals. But you have to be part of that budget cycle at all those taxing entities. It's not easy. It's hard to go to the city hall, county commissioners, ESD boards, school boards, ACC, the health district, right? You can have 5 or 6 taxing districts you have to go to.
Okay.
But that's really who decides on how much taxes you pay. Also, if you want lower taxes, stop voting for tax increases. This Project Connect that Austin approved, that increased city taxes by 25%, right? And people don't, people look at, oh, this is nice to have, but they don't realize that it's going to cost them in their tax bill. And that was a huge increase. Austin used to be a pretty low tax rate, like 42 cents. Pflugerville used to be the highest. Now Austin is at 53 cents and Pflugerville is at 49 cents. Pflugerville is in the middle of the pack when we used to be the highest, because you pay for it. Bonds, when bonds come out, if you approve that, that's going to increase your taxes, because the bond tax rate has to always be able to pay for all the bonds that they issue. So whenever there's a measure out there for a tax increase, the schools will have a TRE or VA TRE. Those will increase your taxes too. You vote no, and your taxes won't go up.
And I appreciate you saying that, because that's something I've been saying on this channel. And the problem I have with our voting system is that homeowners foot a majority of the taxes. Yes, renters do foot a lot of the taxes, and the reason why is because renters pretty much raise the rents on renters when they have to pay more taxes. So yes, they roundabout pay it, but they don't. But a lot of renters don't understand how this works. So a lot of people are transient into Austin, right? They're in here for a year or two, and then they're off to somewhere else. And then they're here during a voting cycle, and they vote on something like Project Connect. And Project Connect, for me, was one of the biggest fails I've ever seen this city pass. And it was partly because what they were saying, the value of what it was going to cost, wasn't true, especially for the amount of ridership that would actually be on it. Now, people hit me in the comments so angry. Jeremy, you drive, you're so lucky. Look, I get it. If I felt that it was actually going to do what they said it would, I would be okay with it. But how they how they said how they were going to collect the money was off. Oh, the average price is $330,000 home, so it's going to be $300 per home. At that time, even the values for homes was over $400,000. So where the hell did they get this magic number of $300 a person? And so a lot of people vote for these things that are going to be transient. If you're going to tax homeowners, then allow the homeowners to have a larger say in what the tax is, or be honest. I really don't feel that they were honest with Project Connect, and that's just the hill I'm going to die on, but it's here. It went from 5 billion to 10 billion this year because it's magically, oh, look at that, prices went up. So I want to get back to the question I was asking a little bit ago. I do want to get to the questions because a lot of you are writing questions in here. So the point I was making is you can protest your valuations from going and just doing the protest. You can do the informal or the formal. The formal is so ridiculous. I don't even recommend it. You can do it. The other is to do what you said and go when they're doing ratifying all the bonds or ratifying all of the taxes with the districts. And you said travistaxes.com is where they post that. Okay.
Yep. They have to post it. Yeah, and you can provide feedback there. Yep.
Okay, so perfect. So if you got a crazy valuation this summer, instead of going on vacation and getting that bikini body, you're going to have to go in front of the tax boards like Anthony did. He still has his bikini body, but that's totally different subject. And he went out and he protested and he got valuations down in his area. And so much so that they made him part of the board eventually. So thanks for that. So those are your options. Why I don't like the formal is when I did it, I basically came and brought all this information. You have 3 people there and then a tax person for the city or the TCAD. And I would give them all the reasons why my valuation should be lower. And every single one of those persons went, yep, oh, I agree. And they looked at the tax person, the tax person's like, no. And they go, she said no. It's like, what the heck happened? So you might get luckier than I did. You could also, if you want to protest your taxes, you can also, or protest your valuation, sorry, not your taxes. You can hire a company, Five Stone Tax. I partnered with a company, Home Shield Tax, so you can look at them as well. I do have a paid partnership with them, but I am not taking any revenue from it. I'm actually donating every single dollar that is made to Community First Village. So just if you do use them, I do have a partnership with them. All right, let's answer some of the questions in here. Anything else you want to say before we start answering questions about?
Just one thing about there's a proposition that you can go vote right now in early voting, Prop 1 and Prop 2.
Okay.
Right? Prop 1 will give some tax rates to over 65. Prop 2 will increase the homestead exemption from $25,000 to $40,000.
So you want to vote yes on both of those? If you're wanting.
Well, here's the deal. I'm going to be honest with you. It's an illusion, right? This will not lower taxes. It will lower tax. If you're a homestead, it will lower your taxable value by $15,000, right? But it's not going to lower the taxes that the cities, counties, and schools get. Somebody has to pay for that. And you know who's going to pay for that? You as an investor, commercial property owners, renters, because the city and the schools aren't going to go without their money. So those exemptions are really shifting a portion of the taxes from one group, homeowners, to another group, commercial property owners. So if you vote yes for both of them, yeah, you'll get a little discount on Prop 2. But if you're not over 65, you're going to have to pay for the 65-year-old to get the tax breaks on their school taxes. So it's an illusion, right? If I'm selfish, I'm going to vote no on one and yes on 2 because I'm a homeowner, but I'm not over 65. If I'm over 65, I'm going to vote yes on both of them because I own my house and I'm over 65. But if I'm a renter or own commercial property, I'm voting no because I'm going to have to pay for that. Exemptions only lower taxes for the people that have it, and the people that don't get it have to pay for it. So keep that in mind. It's a balancing act. It doesn't really change the outcome of the overall picture. If you want lower taxes, you got to spend less, is bottom line. Playing with exemptions.
Wait. If you want the answer to our problems isn't throwing more money at it?
No, it's not. No.
Oh, wow, not. Anthony, that's quite insightful. I've always been told to fix a homeless problem or fix this problem, we just got to throw more money at it. That'll fix it.
No.
Sorry, Ian would be here laughing because him and I talk about stuff like that all the time. Bye, Ian. I miss you. All right, so McBeadle says no on one, just on two. I don't know how much you've been paying attention to the comments here, but a lot of the comments are great. One question I have: what do they do with the slush fund of the extra taxes they collect?
Slush fund? You mean
Yeah.
the rainy day fund?
Yeah, where does the rainy day fund go? Is that trips to Cancun? Like, how does that
No,
work?
well, the rainy day fund is from oil and tax revenues. So
Oh,
all of the
okay.
revenues that the state gets from oil and tax goes into this rainy day fund, and it's supposed to be for a rainy day, a one-time event that happens. The state legislature can tap that and apply that to state spending for a rainy day, a catastrophe, a one-time event. It's not intended to be used for ongoing maintenance and operations of the state. It's just supposed to be there for a cushion. For when we had a hurricane, they tapped into it a little bit. But it's getting pretty big. Where I think they did use a little bit of it for schools in the last go around. So it's whatever the legislature has wants it to be. But generally, it's there as a rainy day, just in case something happens. So, but that's none of our property taxes that goes into that. That is all revenues from our oil industry.
Matt says it gets embezzled. So I've always I have so many more questions about property taxes because I feel like they purposely make it hard for you to understand the process and how things go. I mean, is it me, or is that because
No, it is. When I started studying it, I was like, why is it so complicated? And then I realized it's complicated on purpose because over the years, lawyers and attorneys got in there. It's like, what can we do to make it look like people are, not raising taxes? And they put all of these rules and formulas and different things into it that it just kind of evolved into what it is. And once you know what it is, you can do stuff, but it's still hard to change the system. So I don't know if somebody designed it that way, but it evolved into what it is today. And but it's not one person. It's a special interest group that wanted to do more and advocated for a lot of these different rules. But we are a conservative state. Our state legislatures don't believe in high taxes. So that's why they passed HB2 3 years ago and put in a 3.5% cap for cities and counties and a 2.5% cap for schools, because they saw them raising taxes 8% per year when inflation was at 2%. And it's like, no, but the cities and schools have found a workaround to that. And that's another video. But, approving TERS and issuing bonds is a way around those caps, because those are not capped. And there are groups, TML, that the city uses that they teach them how to get around those caps. So the caps are real and it's preventing huge increases, but there's ways around it that the law creates. All of these TERS, PUDs, and PIDs that you might have heard of all contribute to that, because those are exempt from the property valuations. And that's what cities are doing now. They're putting everything in a TERS so that it's not counted in the valuation when they increase our taxes every year.
Well, so we had the mayor of Kyle on not too long ago, and he was I don't want to misquote him, but he was trying to explain, a few of these tax district areas, they don't pay the city taxes. So the roads that go to these the city's supposed to pay for the expansion of these roads, but since those communities don't pay into their PID or whatever special tax district, those roads don't get fixed as fast. Kind of not exactly what he said, but kind of said.
Yeah.
But
it's probably a mud, maybe a mud.
Yeah.
And the muds are usually not part of a city, so the mud pays for the utilities and the roads for 30 years. But generally it's the county that's supposed to be responsible for those roads, right? If you're not in a city, the county, we pay county taxes, but the county doesn't do as good of a job as a city. So if you're part of a city, you're saying, hey, yes, we voted for a city tax so that we can have our own police and our own roads and manage it ourselves, because we don't like how the county is doing it. And that's what cities are. They're really an experiment of collectivism, like a big HOA. You want more stuff and you're willing to pay for it, so you incorporate as a city.
Well, and so speaking of that, so you have the mayor Kyle, who's all about expanding and growing Kyle, right? Which would makes a lot of sense, because the more homes you can put on the ground, whether they're dense or whether you're putting single family homes, the more tax base now you have to collect from, right? So the thing with the city of Austin, somewhere I read that we only have about 15,000 acres of buildable land left in the city of Austin. So it would make more sense to me that we'd build more condos or build more, like, reduce the red tape. I feel like there's a lot of red tape to build. So a lot of people are saying, okay, there's going to be so much new construction. All these builders are overbuilding because they have all these permits pulled. The sad reality is the permits are pulled, but you still don't have stuff on the ground. It's still a lot of red tape to get a property from beginning to end. I think it would make more sense for the city of Austin to figure out a way to reduce the red tape and make it easier to do expansion and expand neighborhoods, so we could have a larger tax base.
You're absolutely right. Austin has a lot of regulations in their coding that determines how you can build, and we have low supply, and if we want to increase supply, we got to make it easier for builders to build. Now, builders will say they can build as much as they can right now. They don't have the labor, and that's the other side. If it was up to me, south of the border, we have a lot of laborers. Flood the system with laborers, and that'll reduce it too. But that's a political decision.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things impacting what we can build. But if it was up to me, and Americans don't want to be in construction, let's hire south of the labor and build us out and get that supply up. Maybe it'll reduce inflation, and it's a win-win for everybody. Maybe lower our cost of living here, because it's expensive.
But it would lower the prices of homes, which means that how would the tax district raise and get more tax dollars? If prices come down and they have to reduce, I mean, let's be honest.
They'll never reduce, because they can always collect the same amount of taxes as the previous year plus 3.5%. So even if valuations went down, they would just raise the tax rates to compensate for it. So that's the next shoe to drop. If our values ever start falling, there'll be a big fight for tax rates to go up. And it hasn't been that way in 10 years, but values do come down. I moved here 12 years ago in 2009, and I bought my house in the pits of the economic depression, and my house went down for the first 3 years, and then since 2013 it's been up every single year.
Did your valuation go down?
Yeah, my valuation.
Yep, I had 1 year where they went down, but it was because somebody in our neighborhood had gone to the taxing district when they did the rates and everything and complained. Maybe it was you. Did you used to live in Deer Haven? Anyway, and we actually went down. It went down like maybe $400 for the year. But the problem we run into is there's a lot of investors. Dan's on here, Dan Hunter. You have all these investment properties, and the challenge is that all your investment properties go up $300 a month, right? Because it's $4,000 in taxes, it's $300 a month. Now I have to go, okay, I have to raise my rental rates. Now, do I even get that? Now, is it even worth having this property? If prices keep going, if prices start going flat, is it worth me holding on this property while they're raising my values and I'm paying more in taxes, yet I'm not making more from the rents?
Yep.
This doesn't make sense.
Renting out single family homes, I think next year there'll be a flood of those investment properties going on the market, because most people don't know what the taxes are going to be. But you're going to get your tax bill this November with the new rates, and it will be up significantly, because as an investor, you don't get a homestead exemption. You pay the market rate, and it's going to be huge. So those, I would be selling if I were you, but next year, everybody that rents out single family homes are going to be putting them on the market, because they're not going to have anybody that can pay an extra $300, $400, $500 a month for their property taxes. So that's my prediction for next year, because it hasn't quite hit everybody, the ramifications of these increased valuations, but you're going to see it next year.
So that's a fair assessment. I actually agree with you quite a bit there. I thought that it was started this year, based on taxes going up last year as high as they did. I think so. Here's the balancing act. Right now, we're about half a month inventory. Interest rates have gone up almost around 6%. I know I personally was looking at moving to Dripping Springs, yet now I'm looking at buying a house that was 600, 700. I'm like 1.2 to 1.5 million. I don't want to do that. So I'm not going to sell and I'm not going to move, but there might be a lot of people that say, hey, I can't even afford like that. I can't even afford the move up anymore. So I'm not going to do the move up. I'm going to stay. So I think we might see a lot of people just stay. The other thing we might see is a lot of people decide they can't buy because if interest rates do stay that high, now we see the inventory that's coming out is going to compound, right? So we're going to go from half a month in April. We're probably going to be, when the April numbers come out, we'll probably be about 0.7 of a month inventory. When May comes out, probably about 1.1. We'll probably be about a month and a half inventory by July. That's what I'm saying. So a lot of that's going to be the inventory from builders finally getting out. I think will be some sellers that say, screw this, I'm out. So next year, what happens in the market next year? Do prices actually go down? And how much do they go down if they do go down?
Well, the valuations next year will go up. You know, the market for this year, it's continuing to rise or stay stable. So our valuations next year will go up, but interest rates are climbing, so people are going to be able to afford less, and you know that will definitely have an impact on the market. So I think next year will be interesting. It's hard to say, right? There's a lot of good things going on in the area with Tesla and all these jobs moving in. So that keeps demand up. But unless they got cash and they have to finance, with rates going up, they're going to have, they won't be able to afford as much as they did in the past. So
did I say on this channel, I met Elon 2 weeks ago? It was the greatest thing ever.
Oh, no, you did?
I did, yeah.
At the grand opening?
At the rodeo. It was really cool.
I was trying to get in on that, and I'm actually on the Pflugerville Economic Development Corp, and usually we get invites, but they weren't passing them out for some reason. And I would have loved to have met him.
It was bizarre. This was after he had purchased the 9% of
Twitter. Yeah.
So I said to him, hey, next time you buy a company, let us know so I can buy stock first. And he goes, okay.
Well, you can. I bought a little bit, and you can buy it for like $48 now, and it's being bought out at 54. So it's an arbitrage play.
I like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're right though. There's still so many companies that are moving to the Austin area. I think it's going to be hard to see a huge decrease in prices next year. I think we're just going to see a lot more what we saw in like 2018, where it was just like, did we have elections in 2018? Maybe 2019, where it was a lot more gradual and slow. It wasn't as crazy as an uptick as we saw.
Even in the 2009, 2010 crash, and the rest of the states were down 20, 30%. Austin only went down like 15%.
Yeah.
And only for 1 year, and then it's been off to the races. I
mean, really, so here's my graph. So if we look at last year, I had 2019 on here, but you couldn't see these numbers because it was so far below. But 2019 was like this blue graph, but a lot less severe. And if you look already this year, this is a pretty big jump. And I have a video coming out Tuesday with what my predictions, the April numbers are and some other stuff. But this is going to go up even further. It's going to go up quite a bit. So this is going to do a lot like this. But I really do feel when we hit here, there's going to be a really big rebound. The problem is how high do prices go between now and then, and how far down is this rebound? I doubt this rebound comes below this 625 number. It might come in right around 600, so maybe we're $25,000 higher, but it's still not going to come below last year's numbers. It's just not.
Yeah. Well, you told me this. You see a lot more people in the market than me. How many of them are cash buyers, and how many of them are financing? because if they're financing, they're going to hit interest rates issues.
Yeah.
If they're cash, it doesn't matter.
So I have clients coming in 2 weeks that are buying investment properties cash. I have clients that just wanted a contract on our properties, 2 of them over $1 million. Those are both financed. So, I mean, I'm still seeing a good deal financed. What's crazy though is the jumbo loan is actually a lower rate than the regular 20-year, the 30-year, 20% down conventional. So if you're getting, and it was that last week. I don't know if that's still true this week, but so if you're getting $1.5 million property and you're doing a jumbo loan, your rate's actually better than if you were to buy a $500,000.
Yeah. Well, you know, the Fed was probably going to start increasing by 0.5 percentage point, and that's going to get those rates up to 6-7% pretty quickly and stay there. So anybody financing, they're just not going to be able to pay more. So it'll probably peter out in the same time frame. You know, June will be the peak, and then it comes back down. That's the cycle.
Yeah.
But the Fed is going to do everything it can to slow down this economy, and the housing market is a big part of it. So it has to slow down to a little bit. You know, my prediction is this is probably going to be the peak, but you know, we'll see how it is, because it can't keep on going up this fast forever. It just
yeah, no, I agree with you, and I think a lot of people that are, you know, there's a lot of people on the fence or on the sidelines right now because of that, right? You have all these prices have gone up so high. I mean, obviously, we're repeating the same thing over and over, but I think there's a lot of people that I've talked to that are on the fence, or now they're just on the sidelines waiting. And so we'll see when those prices come back down in August, September. Will they buy like I told them to last year? You know, everybody says, "Oh, the realtor says to buy." Realtors always say to buy, but I was telling people to heavily buy right here. Now, if you would have bought right here, let's say you'd have bought at the 525 mark, you could have $100,000 in equity.
Yeah, that's insane.
So there's a reason why I tell people that it's okay to buy now, as long as you're holding for many years. It's okay to buy now, but if you're gonna really try to get a deal, it's this time of the year right here. That's what you're trying to get.
Well, right now is the best time to sell. If you want to sell in the spring,
especially so you don't have to protest your tax valuations.
Yep. So, you know, and if you have investment property, my neighbor, he put his house for sale. He had it rented for 3 months, and you know, he's asking $500,000 for it. And
we'll send it to me. I got buyers coming in next week.
I think it's going to be sold pretty quick. It's you know, they said they couldn't find anything for $500,000 in this area.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. Yeah, no thanks. But now into the property tax. Yeah, no thanks. Yeah, that's good evening, gents. Lots going on as of late. What's going on right now? I lost my holiday fund in the stock market. Well, I mean, sorry, Tom Petty. You got your music career to fall back on, though. All right, well, cool. Anthony, thank you so much for joining us. Sorry we didn't get to a lot of the questions. I really wanted to get to all my questions about how I can really stick it to the man. So, Anthony, you're fantastic. I really appreciate your time, man.
Sure, man. Anytime, whenever you want information on it. It is a complicated topic, but it's an important one that we all understand how it works. And, you know, get out there when the tax rate hearings, the budget process are going to affect. And you know, the number one place is the school board. I'm on my local school board bond committee. They want to do another bond, and I'm convincing them that they should lower the tax rate by 10 cents. And I think we're going to actually do it this year because they see the rise in appraisals. And the more people that get involved in the process, the better off we will be. But people have to participate. If you don't participate, then you get the government you get. So, you know, I was just a one-man guy doing my thing, and you guys can do it too. But you got to get involved in the right areas and avoid the illusions that, you know, everybody's trying to paint and throw everybody else under the bus. It's the cities, counties, and school boards and county commissioners that decide our taxes, and that's who you have to talk to and convince if you want lower taxes.
Okay, well, I'm going to do it this year. I'm taking time away from my sun tanning to go participate in getting our taxes lowered in my neighborhood. All right, everybody, we'll catch you next video. Thank you so much.